With the catacombs behind you, why not the sluice? It's just a different sort of filth at the end of the day. Time to press on. What's going on, everyone? It's Loki Orin. Yeah, we knew that was coming. It's just stress. That's manageable. And yeah, here we are with Insane Crown Posse heading into the sluice. Getting an extended run with these folks, which is probably a good thing because we do need to find as many gains as we can, trying to be as powerful as we can here. I guess we'll grab the candle. Why not? But while we're traversing here, I'm going to talk about something else. So first of all, hope everyone's doing well out there. I recently 100%ed Claire Obscure Expedition 33 Claire Obscure. Or other way around, whatever. Expedition 33, the big hot game that everyone's talking about. So, you know, if other people are playing it, I guess spoilers ahead, I'm sorry. But I played through the whole game, and then I went and got every achievement and did, you know, basically everything there is to do. You know, 100%ed it in every meaningful fashion. And I gotta say, I quite enjoyed the game. I mean, I guess in some sense that's obvious, given that I, you know, played the game to the point of getting every single achievement. But I thought it was a really good game. But I just wanted to weigh in here in this space on something that nobody asked my opinion about. Hi, Kitty Cat. Nobody asked my opinion about, but you know, I figured I'd give anyway, which is the ending. So again, spoiler warning: if you haven't played. Expedition 33 and you don't want to be spoiled, by the same token, game's been out for a bit, and I imagine it's pretty hard for people to avoid, yes, Kitty Cat, I know you're there. It's pretty hard for people to, you know, miss anything about it. Kitty Cat, those are claws. Those are claws in my leg. Anyway, let's talk about the game. So, at the end, you have the big choice. Who do you side with in the final moment of the game? Because keep in mind that, at least in my playthrough, and I imagine in most people's playthrough, that fight is not hard. Whichever you know, companion or whichever character you choose to fight as, whether it's Verso or Mael, you're probably going to be so massively overleveled, or at least I was, that it was sort of, you know, trivial. It was sort of trivial. Like, the fight itself just was not very difficult. So, with that in mind, you know, it's really the choices which answer do you think is right. And I've danced around this long enough, and I hope everyone's had their moment to get away if they're not if they don't want spoilers. So I chose the Verso ending. You know, I chose to destroy the canvas and let Verso, for lack of a better term, die. Now, thinking about that, like, oh, you know, doesn't that feel pretty awful, because you have Lune and CL, you have all these other characters who, you know, I liked quite a lot, you know, and even perhaps more importantly, Eskie and Monoko, and you're just killing them. You know, they are going to cease to exist, and we've played the whole game with them, and throughout it all, we've pretty strongly had the feeling that these are real living sentient creatures, that they are indistinguishable from people. Which, you know, gets into a whole thing about, you know, what is it to be human, or what is it to be alive, you know, because if a machine can talk to you in such a way that you can't tell whether or not it's real, you know, the Turing test, then perhaps it is. You know, depending on how you want to think about it. But in the end, I made the choice for what, to me at least, felt like a pretty important reason. Which is that, Well, there's actually a couple different reasons that all kind of jointly combine. So the first is that Mael's ending fundamentally is a rejection of the real world and a running away from her life, her problems. And don't get me wrong, she's got a pretty good reason to, not want to be there. Being burned like that, missing an eye, not being able to speak. She definitely has pretty valid reason to be like, hey, I don't really want to be here. If I can have my my preferences here, I don't want to be here. When do you die? You die second. Okay. So it sucks, but we get rid of that corpse. So I get that, but also fundamentally, Mael can't run away from her life forever. One of two things is going to happen, based on at least my understanding of the setting here, the lore. Either she leaves the canvas and goes back to the, air quotes, real world, or at least the world is the part of the world that is real as we understand it. And she, has to deal with the frankly, the awful situation. Or she stays in the canvas until it kills her. Like, those are her two options. We know that staying in the canvas long term is not viable. It was killing Aline the Paintress, who I've since read some stuff basically saying like Aline is a much stronger paintress than Alicia/Mael ever was. So, there's not like Mael's built different option. It is fatal to stay in the canvas long term. So either Mael stays in the canvas and is effectively committing some variation of suicide. That doesn't actually heal us for anything. Or she eventually has to leave the canvas. In either case, something that I don't feel like a lot of people address is that when she dies, and, the expectation is that, she will die eventually, whether it's of old age or because, the canvas killed her. You're first, and then you're next. I don't really want to... whatever. The implication is that she is going to die, whether she dies from the canvas or just dies of old age. And when that happens, the canvas is going to die anyway. So Lune, Ciel, Monoko, Eske, they're all, in a sense, already dead. Jeez. Please tell me Standfast heals. There we go. They are already in a dying world, and no amount of recrimination, no amount of wishful thinking, no amount of anything is going to change that. Which sucks. It sucks that these characters that we love so much are, doomed, effectively. But it still doesn't change the facts. So, Mael is at best stalling the inevitable. Which, maybe you're okay with that. Maybe you feel like, hey, that's an acceptable outcome. I didn't find it to be particularly acceptable. To me, it seems, at best the height of selfishness, if not kind of running away and denying your life. But losing my train of thought for a second here. But, setting that aside, if we set aside for a moment that is what's going to happen, that eventually the canvas is going to fade, and, these folks are going to, die one way or the other, something that really stuck with me in the moment, it was something that I made, kind of a conscious choice to evaluate, was think about what when everyone talks about this canvas, what do they say? The paintress, Aline, refers to it as Verso's canvas. Renoir, the villain of most of the story, until the very end, when we realize there's more to this, refers to it as Verso's canvas. Once Mael / Alicia is clued into that, she refers to it as Verso's canvas. The characters Lune, Ciel, these people who are products of this canvas, so they can't really, like, they don't really exist outside of this canvas, but they still refer to it as Verso's canvas. Oh, hang on, we gotta pause. Everyone, give your best, first of all, we're gonna do that. Give your best Watts in the comments section, because it is Swineskiver. But anyway, like I was saying, so everyone, everywhere in the game, at every point, very pointedly, very specifically, refers to it as Verso's canvas. And perhaps, I guess most obviously or most importantly here, Verso calls it Verso's canvas. So there is no dispute anywhere in the story here about whose canvas this is. It is Verso's. So, when Verso says, I want it to stop, when he very clearly articulates, and there's not like there's any ambiguity about what he wants here, says, I want the pain to stop. It's pretty hard for me, oh, this is bad. It's pretty hard for me to look at that situation and say, oh, Verso should be forced to keep living. Because I care so much about these other characters. Verso should be forced to keep going. Kind of regardless of what he wants. It's his canvas. It's this manifestation of his soul. Jesus. Well, this is going really badly. Double meltdown here. Okay, resolute. That's a good start. Thank you, Sol and Yell. Miles. That's okay. Suboptimal, but we can't expect it all to work out there.
Fellowship forged through toil.
But so everyone refers to it as Verso's canvas, and then in this critical moment, when finally somebody, asks I guess nobody ever actually asked him. Get out of here, Swineskiver. Remember, what's in the comments section. But in the kind of, finale here, nobody asks Verso's opinion, but, what did Verso want? Verso wanted the pain to stop. Verso, who is the owner of this canvas, jeez, wanted the story to end. Oh, thank God. Okay. Shit, we don't have any way to heal here. Come on with this. Holy shit, Snacks. Okay. Ooh. Clive hanging in there like a boss. I think I gotta risk it here. We've got to get the damage done. Sorry, I will return to Expedition 33 in a second here. I need to deal with this. Holy shit, this has been close. Alright, please tell me this is enough. It is not. Does get him to death's door, though. I've got to do the heal. You're going to Death's Door, right? Either way? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, sort of regardless of anything else, it's Verso's canvas. Nobody ever disputes that. And Verso says he's done. Verso says, hang it up, I want out. So, to me, it felt like, okay, that seems like a fairly important request. Now, I can understand where Mael is coming from, where, Alicia is coming from. I get it. But it's not her canvas. It's not her right to force this person who, has made it very clear that he doesn't want to be there to keep going. Particularly in the scope of, somebody who is in, frankly, pain. And to kind of further, touch on that or kind of point to that as something that I noticed. When Verso goes to the kid Verso, the soul of Verso that is in the canvas and is sitting there, the worries you say, kind of an interesting moment happens where the kid Verso, is working on the canvas, continuing to paint the canvas, because that's what he has to do. That's his existence. But in this moment, Verso says, hey, you can stop, basically. Like, you can stop doing this. 6 to 11, is this can do it. Okay, that was big. We had to get that one done. So Verso says, like, hey, you don't have to keep doing this, you can stop. And what does Kid Verso do in that moment? He stops. Almost instantly. Almost immediately. Oh, another meltdown. Jeez. Well, actually doesn't. I mean, it doesn't really make anything any worse. But he stops. He doesn't like look up and say some, granted he doesn't speak, but there's no indication that he like, puts up a, for lack of a better term, puts up a fight. He doesn't say something like, no, I want to keep painting, or no, they need me. Like, he gives no indication at all that he necessarily even cares. Nice! Attaboy. Calm's a nice pickup. He stops immediately. And, there's no indication that painted Verso, like, did anything. Like, he didn't, grab the kid's arm and, like, pull him away or something. He just put a hand on his shoulder and said, hey, you can stop. And the kid stops immediately. And I think that told me more than anything that Verso's soul, the element in the canvas that was him, was done. He wanted it to stop. This wasn't, I guess said another way, painted Verso was not lying when he said, like, I just want this to end. That was, that was pretty clearly what he wanted. So yeah, this has been a little long and rambling, but that's what happens when you get freeform on stuff. But ultimately, that's why I chose the Verso ending. Now, I can hear or kind of feel the discussion point the other way. That Verso, the single person, does not have the right, I guess you could say the right or the privilege to kill a whole bunch of kill a whole bunch of what sure seem to be living, breathing creatures. They the other painted beings sure seem to be thinking, caring people with thoughts and dreams, even if their world is ultimately a simulation of reality and not not something that's truly real, I guess, though even that's kind of a debate. And to that I say that is very true, but to me, the deciding point, thank God for this, by the way, those pustule salves are huge.
Your coach is
The
lazy.
deciding point to that,
You
or like
can
the
carry no
counterpoint to
more.
that is the other, the painted beings, the others, are dead anyway. You know, they've died multiple times. Lune and Ciel died when Renoir gommaged the entire painting. They all died. And all we have left are these recreations by Mael. Now, granted, if you can't tell the difference, circling back to our Turing test thing, is it really like the person died? And that's a point where I think you have to make
The table is
a
the inn awaits its favorite
make a call.
guests.
And ultimately, I chose the Verso ending. You know, I chose to say
The next
that
stop
Mael
leads
can't
the way.
remain in the
Plan
painting,
accordingly.
that she needs to, for lack of a better term, take ownership of her life
Experimentation.
and accept that, like, life is
Academic
painful,
instincts
life
serve you
sucks,
well.
and oh, void the hoarder? Yeah, sure. That, you know, life sucks, life is unfair, and I empathize with that. I can't, you know, I can't
Land is
dispute
truly
how
barren.
incredibly cruel life has been to her. But you can't run away from your life. Or at least if you run away from your life, what good is that doing to for anybody? Including your, I should say, what good is it doing for yourself? Mael is either
Listen,
in this painting committing
Improve.
suicide. Basically, she's going to stay in there until she dies, and that will break her father's heart, which most people probably don't care. Renoir is kind of a jerk. Or she emerges and
Spend what you can.
has to struggle.
For
You know,
wealth no longer has
I don't think
meaning.
anybody disputes that she's gonna struggle in the
it
next
ever
part
did.
as she tries to navigate a world that's unfair to her. But that doesn't mean she can't do it. And, you know, the truth is, I think she needs to do it. She needs to step up and take ownership of her life and start working to overcome the sadness that has, you know, sort of swamped her. Because otherwise, you know, she's got nothing, and the canvas is never going to replace that. The canvas is never going to fix that. So yeah, ultimately, comment section down below. Let me know what you think. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. You're not going to offend me with your disagreements. Oops, I meant to do that in the Jester. Because ultimately, I think this game, you know, I've seen a lot of people make the point, this game is about grief. It's about how one deals with grief. And that's an important and very personal view. So, yeah, that was long and rambly. Hope you all enjoyed, and also, incidentally, holy shit, that was a bad sluice. Holy shit, that was bad. I don't know how we made it out of there, but we did. And thank you all for watching and listening, and we will get rid of that. See you in the next one.